Welcome back to another episode of Black Polyandry TV. I'm Goddess Akasha, and today I will be discussing one of the most controversial topics on polyandry. Does it exist in Africa? Is polyandry an African custom? Okay, and just the other day I saw two African men argue in the comments about whether polyandry is practiced in Africa. It's really, really interesting to me because Africa is a continent. It is not just any one person's country or their one culture, okay? So that's one thing we need to remember, okay? Africa is a continent with many diverse cultures. Okay, so today I want to share with you my findings pertaining to the country Zimbabwe. Okay, I already did Nigeria and all the other countries, but today we're talking about Zimbabwe. Okay, so Zimbabwe is home to some of the world's most incredible natural wonders and wildlife. Located in southern Africa, the country is famous for diverse landscapes and for being an epic safari destination. The country is rich in natural resources with known occurrences of over 40 minerals, primarily gold, nickel, copper, but also coal, diamonds, platinum, and chromite. So, this really busts the myth where people say, oh, only in impoverished areas, Um, you know, they only polyandry only exists in places where the geographical conditions make it necessary. Blah 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 blah. So we're gonna check on the population. So the population is over 16 million. Okay, and that's 92 males to every 100 females. So it's also not a gender ratio issue because the males are actually less than the females. Okay, so that's not a thing either. But I'm going to introduce to you this particular article, and it is written by a Zimbabwean, okay, who actually lives there, works there, and everything. So everything was easy for him to do his research, and this is where I'm able to share many, many things with you guys because I do my research and I get all of my information from the source. Okay. So the name of this research paper is The Dynamic Nature of Non-Traditional Unconventional Polyandry, a Zimbabwean Perspective. And this is by Collins Gurikai Machoko. Now, just as I go along, I want you all to just forgive me when it comes to the pronunciation of the names. I know I may struggle a bit, so just bear with me here, okay? But I want to introduce you guys to this particular research paper and just for a little background sake, show you guys exactly why he's talking about it. So here it says, when I was 12 years old, I was told that one of my aunts, Manaka M., was a polyandrist who was banished from the village by the sub-chief. And as I grew up, I started hearing and reading stories in newspapers of polyandrists in Zimbabwe. And that kindles my interest in doing a research on polyandry in Zimbabwe. Okay, so here it says this study aims to show what is currently happening in Zimbabwe, what previously happened, and what is happening in some African countries and in Africa in general. But the focus country is Zimbabwe. So hopefully we understand that. And as I go along, you can kind of understand the context of who wrote it and what this is about. So we're going to be reading some testimonials, some co-husbands who are actually in polyandrous unions, speaking to the polyandrous women themselves, and just getting their thoughts on their practice in the Zimbabwe country and how they are affected within that society. Polyandry is leagued with lofty positions for women. Interviewee Rangarai Panganayai attested that modern informal polyandry is present among polyandrists whose social status is well above the norm, who have great freedom and who act with a level of composure and are not limited by males. So, interviewee Sanungarai Gapu agreed with Hardy, who argued that polyandry awards liberty to women. Polyandrists are in full control of their sexuality and are not controlled and oppressed by their co-husbands. This is affirmed by interviewee Gapu, who said, "None of my three co-husbands controls and oppresses me. If he does, I immediately jilt him and look for another one. In fact, the co-husbands are afraid of abusing me because they know that I am not starved of men, and I will jilt them if they do. They compete for my love." Gapu again agrees with Hardy as debating. In very few societies do females have full autonomy, therefore making non-classical informal polyandry far more common than classical formal polyandry, which was practiced among the classical societies. Interviewee Zarai Gorwi attested, "I have three co-husbands who know each other very well. They all know that I am simultaneously in sexual relationships with them. I invite the one I want at any time to my house. If anyone comes to my house without my invitation, I send him away. If he persists coming without my invitation, I break the sexual relationship with him and look for another one. I have told my co-husbands that they should not quarrel or fight over me. It is me who is in control of all the three co-husbands. I equally love them, not because of the financial and material gifts which they give me, but because I love to be in a polyandrous relationship. My mating fondness is polyandry. I have a very good and well-paying job, for I am a school teacher for a profession. I can support and raise my two children without any material or financial help from any of my co-husbands." Another interviewee said that she actually has a father of the house with one of her husbands. So basically, the one who contributes the most financially is the one she considers the father of the house. So he actually has more privilege than the others. So if she has a junior husband over at her house and the father of the house actually comes in, then her junior husband has to leave. And everyone actually understands this particular dynamic. So again, the dynamic can look different for everyone, but the common factor is that the woman is actually in control of her relationships. And this is actually something that I like to see, and probably very different than you would expect, especially from a lot of the documentaries that we see on YouTube already, where they're showing a lot of polyandrous couples or families where they are extremely impoverished. They don't have, careers or anything like that. So this is why I like this particular article, because it focuses on what's happening right now currently. And this article was written in 2017, I believe. So if you guys would like this article, I do have it for anyone who wants the PDF, and you can just DM me or whatever. But let's get back to the testimonials. Okay, now, so let's hear from a male perspective. Interviewee Muvimi Gochahembe said, "My wife of 11 years is in a polyandrous practice, which I know and like very much, for I cannot sexually satisfy her, for I am suffering from erectile dysfunction. She goes out of our matrimonial home twice or three times a month to spend some time with her male sexual partners, who are my friends, whom I go with to the pub to drink beer together. My wife brings home some money and material goods from her sexual partners. Each time I meet her sexual partners, I thank them for the financial and material gifts. So now that we've gotten an idea of how these relationships are structured or how they get into them, I really want to delve into why they're doing this, because it's not a gender issue, and it's also not a lack of resource issue. So why is it that they are practicing polyandry? So it says here, four themes emerged from this research on Zimbabwean polyandrists. Firstly, the joy by women of being in a polyandrous sexual relationship, polyandry as their preferred mating predisposition. Secondly, impotence of the husbands who cannot sire children. Thirdly, erectile dysfunction of husbands who do not sexually satisfy their wives. And lastly, the polyandrists do not want to have a heartbreak after a male sexual partner decides to terminate the relationship. They still have other co husbands whom they fondly love. The findings indicated that the joy of being in a polyandrous and a co-husband was the number one reason that made some Zimbabwean women get engaged in polyandrous behaviors, and why some men opt to be co-husbands. The impotent and erectile dysfunction of the husband were the number two reason that Zimbabwean men allowed for co-husbands in their marriages, because this was necessary to protect the marriage rather than getting a divorce. 100% of the co-husbands knowingly and fondly accepted to be co-husbands, provided financial and material wealth to their sexually concurrently shared wife, and feared public condemnation and shame by chiefs, churches, and diviners for being a co-husband. The research results showed that for 44% of the interviewees, polyandry is their mating preference. They enjoyed polyandrous practices just as some men enjoyed polygynous relationships. Married women who were involved in fraternal polyandry were 100% officially and culturally accepted and recognized, because traditionally it is accepted for a Zimbabwean male sibling or male kinsman to father children for his impotent brother. Traditional Zimbabweans accept fraternal polyandry for the sake of raising children for the impotent brother. This is the same as inheriting a widow for the sake of raising children for the deceased brother and materially and financially caring for the children left by the deceased brother. The Native Americans call this the leveret. So you can see how this is practiced over different countries. Despite the fact that fraternal polyandry for the sake of raising children for the impotent brother is 100% accepted by traditional Zimbabweans and chiefs and condemned by Christians and Muslims, it is done in secret, so as not to shame the impotent brother and not to make the children born out of the polyandrous relationship not to know their biological father. 22% of the women who opted for associated polyandry for the sake of raising children for their impotent husbands were condemned by their community because they raised children for their husbands by foreigners. So again, Zimbabweans are very, very family oriented. Okay, it is not accepted for a foreigner to father children for another man while his male close relatives are still alive. So yes, the brothers and cousins all have a duty to father their brother's or cousin's wife a child if he is incapable of doing so. So to conclude the video, I just want to go over what we have learned. Okay, we have learned that this is actually a part of the Zimbabwean culture, despite it not being um, recognized by Christians and Muslims. But if you were to just strictly focus on the culture itself, the indigenous culture, the Leverett custom that they practice actually supports polyandry as a common and traditionally accepted practice. And that means that if there wasn't a run, if there wasn't a colonization process and Christianity and Islam was not there, polyandry would still be very much prevalent just as it was in ancient times. So I hope you all enjoyed this video and actually learned something today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and see you next time.